Well, Horatio, it is time to record Dumpster Times number 27. Welcome, everybody, to Dumpster Times issue 27. I am Wanda Duck, editor and publisher of the now online zine Dumpster Times. We publish every Monday of the year. And when I say we, I am talking the editorial we. There are no other people in this dumpster other than my dog, who you will probably hear at some point because he likes to make himself known in these matters. But instead of standing around outside the dumpster, let's go around back and let's settle in the January garden and see where our thoughts go. As you can see, there are some frosty bits on the branches. And while a lot of the East Coast of the country is under a big snowstorm, it's not happening very much here. It's just gentle wafting. Horatio loves it. He goes out, comes back in all covered in droplets, needs to be dried, then he wants to go back out again. But let us move on. 2024. How do you feel about it? To me, it feels like this is the year that we know what's going to be the outcome of the story, or not. But we could have an end to the Trump saga this year. Crossing my fingers. I don't have any firm knowledge of what is going to take place, but I am watching it relentlessly because I want him out of my life. I would like to imagine a world where there is no smelly orange person taking up the airwaves all day long. And I would like to think that I live in a world where there are some people in leadership positions who care about the dignity of human beings, because certainly Donald Trump doesn't. So let's look at an article about some of the latest revelations in the ongoing legal trials and tribulations of one Donald J. Trump. Special counsel probe uncovers new details about Trump's inaction on January 6th. And it has sources listed. Special counsel Jack Smith's team has uncovered previously undisclosed details about former President Donald Trump's refusal to help stop the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol 3 years ago as he sat watching TV inside the White House, according to sources familiar with what Smith's team has learned during its January 6th probe. And I, too, was watching TV on that day. Many of the exclusive details come from the questioning of Trump's former Deputy Chief of Staff, Dan Scavino. Sounds like a commedia actor, doesn't he? Dan Scavino as Arlecchino, who first started working for Trump as a teenager 3 decades ago. Oh my gosh. Talk about a lot of brainwashing and shaping of this individual's servant demeanor to his master, and is now a paid senior advisor to Trump's re-election campaign. Scavino wouldn't speak with the House Select Committee that conducted its own probe related to January 6th, but after a judge overruled claims of executive privilege last year, he did speak with Smith's team, and key portions of what he said were described to ABC News. Don't you like to imagine how this sharing is done? Were they meeting at a clandestine little bar, sharing notes? Was it done electronically? I imagine not. It must have been face to face. Anyway, new details also come from the Smith team's interviews with other White House advisors and top lawyers who, despite being deposed in the congressional probe, previously declined to answer questions about Trump's own statements and demeanor on January 6, 2021, according to publicly released transcripts of their interviews in that probe. I wonder why they didn't want to answer the questions. Sources said Scavino told Smith's investigators that as the violence began to escalate that day, Trump was just not interested in doing more to stop it. Sources also said former Trump aide Nick Luna told federal investigators that when Trump was informed that then Vice President Mike Pence had to be rushed to a secure location, Trump responded, "So what?" Which sources said Luna saw as an unexpected willingness by Trump to let potential harm come to a longtime loyalist. Huh. House Democrats and other critics have openly accused Trump of failing to do enough that day, with the Democrat-led House Select Committee accusing Trump of committing an utter moral failure and a clear dereliction of duty. But what sources now describe to ABC News are the assessments and firsthand accounts of several of Trump's own advisors who stood by him for years and were among the few to directly engage with him throughout that day. Along with Scavino and Luna, that small group included then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, then White House counsel Pat Cipollone, and Cipollone's former deputy, Pat Philbin. There is a photo of President Donald Trump supporters gathered outside the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., January 6, 2021. It's like they're having a ball, doesn't it? All right. According to sources, when speaking with Smith's team, Scavino recalled telling Trump in a phone call the night of January 6th, "This is all your legacy here, and there's smoke coming out of the Capitol." Scavino hoped Trump would finally help facilitate a peaceful transfer of power, sources said. In his wide-ranging indictment against Trump announced this past August, Smith accused the former president of trying to unlawfully retain power by, among other things, spreading lies about the 2020 election and pressuring Pence to block Congress from certifying the results when it convened on January 6th. The former president has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Very angry. As the House investigation established after Trump finished his remarks at the Save America rally early on January 6th, as protesters began making their way to the Capitol, Trump returned to the White House, where he and Meadows settled into chairs around a table in the Oval Office dining room to watch TV coverage of the event. But as also previously recounted in public reports, when Scavino and other White House officials learned that rioters had violently stormed the Capitol, they rushed into the dining room to urge Trump to help calm the situation. Still, Trump didn't do anything. According to what sources said, Scavino told Smith's team, Trump was very angry that day. Not angry at what his supporters were doing to a pillar of American democracy, but steaming that the election was allegedly stolen from him and his supporters, who were very angry on his behalf. Scavino described it all as very unsettling. Oh, is that what you thought? As people were getting injured and property was being destroyed and public service people were running around hiding, seeking safety in the Capitol building. Craziness. At times, Trump just sat silently at the head of the table with his arms folded and his eyes locked on the TV. Scavino recounted, sources said. After unsuccessfully trying for up to 20 minutes to persuade Trump to release some sort of calming statement, Scavino and others walked out of the dining room, leaving Trump alone, sources said. That's when, according to sources, Trump posted a message on his Twitter account saying that Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done. Trump's aides told investigators they were shocked by the post. Aside from Trump, Scavino was the only other person with access to Trump's Twitter account, and he was often the one actually posting messages to it. So when the message about Pence popped up, Cipollone and another White House attorney raced to find Scavino, demanding to know why he would post that in the midst of such a precarious situation, sources said. Scavino said he was as blindsided by the post as they were, insisting to them, "I didn't do it," according to the sources. Some of Trump's aides then returned to the dining room to explain to Trump that a public attack on Pence was not what we need, Donny boy, as Scavino put it to Smith's team. But it's true, Trump responded, sources told ABC News. Trump has publicly echoed that sentiment since then. At about the same time, Trump's aides were again pushing him to do more. A White House security official heard reports over police radio that indicated Pence's security detail believed this was about to get very ugly, according to the House committee's report. As Trump aide Luna recalled, according to sources, Trump didn't seem to care that Pence had to be moved to a secure location. Trump showed he was capable of allowing harm to come to one of his closest allies at the time, Luna told investigators, the sources said. With the chaos inside the Capitol continuing, Trump's aides believed Trump still needed to do more. Sources said Cipollone recalled telling Trump that he needed to explicitly instruct rioters to leave the Capitol. Scavino printed out proposed messages to post on Twitter, hoping that Trump would approve them despite his reluctance to write such posts himself, sources said. The congressional probe found that even Trump's daughter, Ivanka, rushed down to the Oval Office dining room to convince her father that issuing a public message could discourage violence, as the congressional report put it. More than a half hour after Trump was first pressed to take some sort of action, Trump finally let Scavino post a message on Trump's Twitter account, telling supporters to support law enforcement and stay peaceful. It was 2:38 p.m. Minutes later, Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt was fatally shot when she tried to break through a barricaded entrance near the House chamber, and the violence at the Capitol continued to escalate. At least 6 of Trump's closest aides continued to push Trump to do something more forceful than posting what they saw as a weak message on Twitter, sources said. Trump listened to the pleas, but he was just not interested at that moment to put anything out, Scavino told Smith's team, according to the sources. Instead, Trump was focused on watching TV and taking in the chaotic scenes, Scavino said, the sources added. Testifying before the House committee, an aide to Meadows similarly said she heard Meadows say of Trump that day, "He doesn't want to do anything." As recounted in public reports, then House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, other members of Congress, members of Trump's family, and even Fox News personalities also tried to push Trump to take further action. But in response, Trump repeated to many of them that his supporters were simply angry about the election being stolen, sources said. In his own closed-door interviews with federal investigators, Meadows confirmed previous media reports saying that when a desperate McCarthy called Trump, the then president told him, "Well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are." And pardon me for not doing a Trump imitation. That is the last skill that I want to add to my performance repertoire. Let me just say this. When we were watching this go down, we knew all this was happening. There were reports that Trump wasn't doing anything, that people were calling him and running into the office. And we could see that he wasn't saying anything or doing anything to stop it all. Then he made that one little weak tweet, and we watched and watched, and the violence escalated. A woman was shot. During this time, law enforcement agents were attacked and seriously injured. The Capitol was invaded, the electoral count was halted, and the lives of those in the Capitol were put at risk, the House committee said in its report. Doesn't justify this. Sources said that eventually, at the urging of Ivanka's husband, Jared Kushner, Trump agreed to record a video for release. The video, more than a minute long, was posted to Twitter at about 4:15 p.m. That's how long he waited. hoping against hope, I guess, that his supporters would finally reach Pence and string him up, or force Nancy Pelosi to make Trump president again. Who knows what they thought they were doing in their deranged attack on the Capitol? They were just following orders. That's what they were doing. This was a fraudulent election, Trump said, but we have to have peace, so go home. We love you. You're very special. My moms are so special. You believe everything I say, and you send me your money. You're so very special. I don't know that I want to read the rest of this. The point I wanted to make was, we knew when it was going down that it was going down with Trump's blessing, and that he was hoping that more would happen, and it didn't. So he failed as an insurrectionist, but he did support and encourage insurrection and waited for it to happen. Come on, guys, take over. Make them count those fake electors. You can do it. You can do it. But alas, they couldn't do it. They tried. Do you remember, after all of the insurrectionists were gone and the Congress people were brought back in to finish the job, that there were still Congress people refusing to acknowledge the electors of their state went to Joe Biden instead of Trump? So I ask you, if we go through this, if the Supreme Court decides that Trump should be on the ballot, and we go through it, we go through the election, meanwhile, there are all these trials going on, and Trump is making more money every time something bad in the legal world happens to him. And we get to election night again, and the same damn thing happens all over again. What if it's close? What if it isn't close? Trump will pretend that it's close. He will say that he was cheated, and we will be in the same damn position that we're in now. Unless the courts finally, ultimately act and find that he is worthy of some jail time. He's already going to get fined in some situations. You see, if he is taken off the ballot, if the Supreme Court, in all of its originalist wisdom, decides to acknowledge that the amendment says, hey, if you committed an insurrection, you can't be president, and that means you, Donald Trump, then I think the Democrats are going to lose. Because the Republicans, their candidates practicing, going out there on the stump, and they will gather up the Trumpites and their own anti-Trumpites and probably will win. And that would be pretty horrible. But let's say that Trump loses by a whisker and Biden stays in office, then we have to go through, we will still go through legal proceedings, but there will be more chaos, more confusion. I just want this year to be over with. All right, let's look at another story that has nothing to do with presidential politics. And I probably do not like talking about presidential politics, because what good is a president? What good is a king? One person can't possibly represent everybody's best interests. It's a ridiculous concept. We need committees, we need syndicalists, we need subject for a whole nother episode. But we're going to look at what a couple of individuals within the system, the educational system in Ohio, did that was pretty good. Ohio teaches that children born to unmarried parents are worse off. 2 districts push back. And we should note that in Ohio, 42.6% of children are born to unmarried parents, and more than 1/3 of children live with one parent. This article is by Jesse Balmert, from the Cincinnati Enquirer, published January 1st. Ohio requires schools to teach students that having a child outside of marriage is bad for them, for their child, and society overall. Wow. That is one heck of a moral judgment that they are required to put out on their students, huh? 2 school districts pushed back. Katie Onstadt, superintendent of Washington Local School District near Toledo, said she won't tell children that they are doomed to be unsuccessful because of their family structure. All kids can be successful, regardless of the kinds of families they come from, and our kids come from all kinds of families, Onstadt told the USA Today Network, Ohio Bureau. We cannot be sitting in judgment of what people's families look like, and I'm certainly not going to put that in the curriculum. For that stance, Washington Local School District was marked non-compliant with Ohio's standards for venereal disease and sexual education instruction on an annual state report. Can't you just see that grid, that checklist of standards, that section marked venereal disease and sexual education? This was joined by Ridgewood Local Schools near Coshocton, which indicated, we do not agree with teaching all the information below. They were the only 2 districts out of more than 600 to raise issues with the curriculum requirements. In Ohio, 42.6% of children are born to unmarried parents, and more than 1/3 of children live with one parent. Besides a phone call and a letter, there are no practical consequences for not complying. The school district doesn't lose money and won't get a lower grade on their next report card. Onstadt quipped that she probably won't be named Superintendent of the Year. So if there are no consequences, one has to ask, why are there only 2 schools standing up and saying this is ridiculous? If you live in Ohio and your child goes to a public school, I think you should contact them and ask them whether they do discriminate and teach that students who live with only one parent are condemned to a life of poverty, etc., and so on. What are Ohio schools required to teach about sex? Hang on to your hats, kids. Ohio law requires schools to teach these concepts. Stress that students should abstain from sexual activity until after marriage. Teach the potential physical, psychological, emotional, and social side effects of participating in sexual activity outside of marriage. Teach that conceiving children out of wedlock is likely to have harmful consequences for the child's parents, and society. Stress that sexually transmitted diseases are serious possible hazards of sexual activity. Advise students of the laws pertaining to the financial responsibility of parents to children born out of wedlock. Advise students of the circumstances under which it is criminal to have sexual contact with a person under the age of 16. Emphasize adoption as an option for unintended pregnancies. And should you get pregnant, young ladies, and unfortunately have a miscarriage in the toilet, don't try to flush it. Sorry, I had to add that. That wasn't on the list, but we have a case here in Ohio of a poor young woman who had a miscarriage in a toilet and has been arrested for abusing a corpse, among other things. So it's dangerous times to be a woman in Ohio. Even though we have reproductive freedom, we still really don't. Okay, so getting back to this story, is having a child outside of marriage bad for the kid? Society. Wait a minute, before I go further, let's go back to this list. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. What we have here are a lot of threats, a lot of sex is dangerous, sex is a no-no. These arguments are precisely the arguments that are going to get kids interested in wanting to try out sex. So instead of teaching them how to have sex safely, how to identify abusive situations, how to learn how to negotiate with a partner so that needs are met from both sides, knowing when to say no and learning what to do if you say no and the partner doesn't. I mean, these are things that are important, much more important and much more practical than this stuff, which is all just making sex out to be something that is the grand reward if you go through denying your impulses and urges until you have met your mate and have been legally married. Not at all practical. All right, let's get back to the heart of the argument. Is having a child outside of marriage bad for the kid and society? Question mark. About 40% of Americans who gave birth in 2021 were not married, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That rate is up significantly from 18.4% in 1980, but has remained relatively stable over the past 15 years. So what is the impact on kids? Compared to kids in married parent households, children in single parent families are more likely to experience poor outcomes. While the research is complex, sometimes contradictory and evolving, mounting evidence indicates that underlying factors such as strong and stable relationships, parental mental health, socioeconomic status, and access to resources have a greater impact on child success than does family structure alone. Well, of course, that was my initial reaction. Who are children most living with as a single parent is the mom. And the mom usually has a lower economic status, individually or together with a man. She usually has the lower paycheck in our society and has to often work harder and longer to make as much money or to make the money that she needs to raise the children. And another thing that isn't specified here is, are they talking about people who have actually been married? Are they talking about people who live together long-term and who just don't want to get the legal marriage certificate? It's not clear to me at all. Married parents tend to be older and have more social, educational, and economic resources than unmarried parents, says Sarah Shop Sullivan, a psychology professor at Ohio State University. It's those differences that cause the differences in child outcomes, and not strictly whether or not parents get married before they have kids. Stability and strong family relationships are important for children's success. Those characteristics can occur in married families, but that's not always the case, she said. High levels of hostile conflict between parents is detrimental to children's development, whether that occurs in the context of marriage or not. Precisely. Unmarried parents tend to have more relationship transitions than married ones. It's the number of transitions that can be harmful. More kids can handle pretty well a divorce or a breakup and then a remarriage. Once you start having lots and lots of those changes, that can be disruptive for children or anyone, quite frankly. Why keep trying if it's not working out? Ultimately, the evidence suggests that what goes on in families matters a lot more than their structure. Well, for sure. And, you know, bravo to these two school districts who had the guts to say, this standard is ridiculous. We've come quite a way since I left school in 2015 because the standards were ridiculous. But when I tried to say it, I was told to shut up by my union leader and just take it. Go create a standardized test for middle school drama kids to take to prove that I taught them what they should know according to the standards. Those standards. Let me just go on a little rant about standards. I'm giving you some inside information because I was on the national team kind of late in the game. I was asked to join the national team of theater drama standards writers for the Common Core. Now, when I said yeah because, oh, it's a weekend away, that hotel is paid, meals are paid. You'll be with a bunch of theater teachers from around the country. Oh, that sounds like fun. I had no clue what the Common Core was or what its purpose was. And I can tell you, after sitting around writing standards, that no school in this country would have been able to meet the standards that we wrote. They were ridiculous. There were so many standards from pre-K through college. And you know what? Most schools don't even have drama programs. So what was the point? And every theater teacher there was putting in their little specialties and making sure they were included. By the end, my understanding of this whole process was that it was a manifestation of capitalism taking over education, because everybody there who worked on those standards, most everybody, was going to go turn around, go home, write curriculum, sell it to an education materials company, and make some bucks on it. So round and round it goes. Do those standards matter to the students? No, they don't. What matters is that the teacher has their own personal standards for whatever the subject, for the process of teaching, and for relating with their students. That's what's important. No standardized national curriculum is going to do that. Anyway, down off the high horse. I am no longer an educator, thankfully. I can spend this year watching the Trump trials, sketching away. I'm still doing my Trump sketches. I've got a few left to finish up because I went off on a tangent in other directions with some other art projects. But I figure there's months ahead of winter and lots of trials that are going to be on the TV that I can watch and sketch too. That's going to be fun. And I will keep you posted and share the results here on the Dumpster Times. That's the news analysis from the Dumpster Times. Coming up sometime this month, there will be a review of the new Kinks compilation releases, The Journey Part 1 and The Journey Part 2. I look forward to doing an actual review in this new online format. Later today, Out of Sorts players are going to be starting their 5-part serial absurdist sci-fi comedy thing. It's at 6 o'clock every day. The episodes are really short, 3 to 5 minutes. And we hope you support us because it's fun and we need your support. So go see that. Out of Sorts Productions, YouTube. Thank you. Bye.